I am back with another books review. My name is Sia, and this time I'm prepared, so to speak. I want to see what I like better to surprise myself, which books I'm going to talk about and trying to find them, or if I prefer having them here at hand. So when going back chronologically, of course. When I talk about the books that I just read, I'm always ready. All right, but let's start it. So the first one that I'm going to talk about today is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So this is an interesting one because for me, the case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is always like screaming Hulk to me, and I think this is where Hulk is based on. But I never knew the original story, and so it was very interesting to read this classic here. And especially to figure out that Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, it's a completely different story. Like, it has nothing to do, even if you've watched like Hulk origin story, it has nothing really to do with this one, and that was very interesting to me. That's something that I didn't know. Like, I so much attributed Hulk to this one. So if you know Hulk and if you like that story, I highly recommend reading this one, because this one is even better, in my opinion. So I really enjoyed this one, so I'm not going to spoil anything, but except saying that it is different if you watched the Hulk. And what is different and why I like it better is because in this story, Robert Louis Stevenson, he goes like more into the psyche, into like once again pursuit of knowledge, a little bit like Frankenstein, and a lot of also like, do you know yourself? Like, do you think you have like two sides to yourself, and kind of like that exploration, or 3 or 4 or 10 sides, and yeah, and what happens if you can like should I say that? Sorry, I'm considering if this is a spoiler or not, that's why I'm holding back. Yeah, like just like what if you could just pick one side, for example. So I really enjoy this. It's very short read, but it shouldn't be longer, in my opinion. It's exactly in there what needs to be in there, and the pace is pretty good. And yeah, I think I give this 4 stars on Goodreads. It's maybe even 4.5 for me, actually. Really cool classic, easy to read also. So, and again, if you think it's gonna be a green monster stalking around, this is like down to earth kind of science. So it's still obviously not real world science, but yeah, a lot of exploration of the human mind, which I really enjoyed. So that was this one. And another one that I read, okay, this is Solaris by Stanislaw Lem. I'm gonna make myself some enemies here, I think. I don't know. So this one was hard for me. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? So it's a sci-fi book. It's a book about the planet Solaris that the human race discovered and are in the process of examining and studying and things like that. And the very interesting premise, or what got me hooked very early on, was like, so according to like mathematical calculations of the universe and like the location of the planet and where it is, like mathematically, like we had calculated that within a couple of years, like the planet will vanish, and I think it was a black hole or a sun that would burn it to death or something. I don't remember exactly what the problem was, but like they did all those calculations, and then the planet never died, and it's like, huh? And then they were like, we probably maybe made mistakes on doing those calculations, but the more they did, the more they figured out, no, they didn't do anything wrong. So there is something happening, like that the planet keeps itself in course of the galaxy is like, I guess, a simple way to describe it. It's described way better in the book, but just to make it very simple for the sake of talking about it. And this premise of like a planet that shouldn't be there, or shouldn't be there as long as it has been, and that there might be something sentient going on, like that maybe it's even a creature, or there's a creature on it, or maybe there's civilization on it, or aliens that like keep correcting so that that it stays where it is. That was so cool. I was so hooked. I loved it. I read and I read and I read. But then, and then it fell together for me. So, real cool premise. The first time it lost me a little bit was, it's a little bit in, but not too much actually. When it's a little bit too, like, it's very scientific, many scientific terms, many of which I didn't know, and normally I don't enjoy that because I like to keep reading. So if it's just one term in 10 pages, I will not pick up the dictionary because I want to keep reading. But here it was to such an extent that I was like, I started translating some of them, or like getting definitions for some of them, not translating. And then it just got too many, so I also stopped. And like at some point it was like, okay, dude, like, good for you that you love those terms. Maybe that's on my end. Maybe if you read sci-fi a little more than I do, this would not have stuck out to you as it did to me. But that was a little bit of a dry patch when just threw those things at you, these scientific talks and almost scientific philosophy talks, something like that. And that was a bit dry, and that's when it lost me a tiny bit. And then the action started happening again, and basically you're following one protagonist, one person who is just arriving at the planet in order to study it or help the team that's on site, which is also very exciting. And then weird things start happening. So once again, I will not spoil it, so don't worry about that. But weird things start happening. Like you can start to question, like, is what we see really true, and what is actually happening? And I enjoy that in and of itself, but then it just, to me, crumbles, because where this story goes, like, the longer I read, the more I dislike the protagonist. And that in and of itself can be okay if it works with the story. But here, to me, it didn't work, because I know he's a smart person, obviously. Like, he was picked to go live on a planet to study it. But he just turns so dumb, in my opinion, that I was just like, dude, why? Like, what? And then, I don't know, it's just, the story went so crazy and so weird, and the protagonist becoming so dumb, that I was like rooting for the other people rather than the protagonist. And I was just like, gosh, that's such a shame. Because I really loved the premise in the beginning of the book so much, because I very vividly remember I wrote to a friend and said, this is probably the best fantasy I've ever read. I wrote to my friend. And then a couple of days later I had to, change my mind. I hate it. Not hate it, that's not true, but yeah, no. I think I gave it 3 stars, so it's not like a bad book. But I'm just so disappointed. Yeah, to me it had so much potential, and the story just, no. I didn't want it to go there. I didn't want the protagonist to become an idiot. So, such a shame, but still, very interesting premise. Not a long read, about 300 pages-ish. No, 200. So, early 200 pages, 220 maybe. So, yeah, if you're intrigued and interested, you can read and let me know what you thought of how it turns out. But that's Solaris. And the last one that I have read is After Dark by Murakami, Haruki Murakami. My first Murakami that I read, and I intentionally picked a smaller one. And this was very interesting and pretty cool. So basically you're following like a night and day in was it in Kyoto or in Tokyo? I don't remember, but somewhere in Japan. And you just follow different peoples, and actually the chapter starts by giving you a time, like so. And then you just follow along all that time. And the cool thing is also, even at all times at the very top of the page, you get the digital time clock. I hope it focuses on it. I'm not so sure it does. holding it a bit higher. So at all time, you know, in the story, like what time it is, and the one that I just showed was 2:19 a.m. So it really goes through the night, and you're following, like, first you start with one character, and then that person meets someone, then you follow that person, then you suddenly meet someone completely new, and first you're not sure why, but then suddenly, like, things, they intertwine and interact with each other, and even, like, people who are not connected at all connect in this night in some random way, and that was just very, very interesting. Yeah, it starts around midnight, and you're in a diner, and then you go from there. And I don't really want to say that much more. It was very interesting read. I was very hooked. I heard from some that they actually tried to read it depending on the timestamp. So you are around the time where the story in the book is, but that would mean reading it overnight. So I didn't do that myself, but I like the idea of it. I might do it one day when I do. I heard there's 24-hour readathons, and instead of being shocked, I actually like the idea. So maybe I'll do that one day, and then that one would be perfect for that. So give it 4 stars. Highly enjoyed it. Very, very interesting. Very I'm leaving it very ambiguous intentionally, because you just need to read it and experience it. And yeah, cool story, different people, one night, intertwining even though they're not otherwise connected, but they will be connected through the story, and you'll see. And it's pretty smart and pretty cool in my opinion, so can highly recommend this one. After Dark by Murakami. And that's it. So that's 3 books that I read earlier this year. It's gonna take me a while to talk about books I'm reading right now. I have finished one of them. Then I started, I made a post on Instagram about that yesterday. I started A Storm of Swords, which is almost 1,200 pages. So that will take long, but I started Storm of Swords actually because I miscalculated the time and my new books haven't arrived yet. But it's a good thing I have A Song of Ice and Fire at home, so I always have filler books if needed, and I needed it now. So it's gonna be a while until I've read a second book, so I can make again a video with at least 2 books. So I will keep going backwards chronologically, talking about some of the books I read this year, and yeah. So until next time, thanks for watching, and let me know what you think. Have a lovely day. See ya!